and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. I welcome each one of you today for daily quiz session with us. And before we begin analyzing today's questions, here's a gentle reminder. In case you are looking for expert guidance for your upcoming civil services exam, then look no further. And do fill up the Google form that we have provided in the description box of this video. Once we have your details, we will contact you and arrange a one-on-one online counseling session only for you from the best of our experts. And now coming back to today's questions. The first question on your screen talks about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, or the global goals as we call them. The statement says, SDG goal number 5 is concerned with quality education, and it is fifth of the total 17 SDGs established by the United Nations back in 2015. The statement is only half correct. Before we analyze the statement, why has this question been taken up today? It has been taken up in the light of a recent PIB release, which says that the Ministry of Women and Child Development, along with the Ministry of Labour and Employment, they both together are trying to promote the participation of Indian women in the workforce. As you might be aware, talking about the global average or the Asian average as compared to both these, the female labour force participation rate in India is abysmally low, which means we have very few women who are participating in the labour force. Now, one primary reason for this is vulnerable unemployment, the fact that majority of these women belong to a class of what we call ghost employees. A very interesting and crucial topic for your GS paper 2, social empowerment or social justice. And both these ministries are trying to promote women participation in labour force through an initiative that's known as Saksham Nari Sashakt Bharat, which translates into women in the workforce for a better, empowered Indian economy of tomorrow. And on that note, let's jump back to our question here. The first statement is only half correct, as I said, because indeed the Sustainable Development Goals were initiated by the United Nations back in 2015. Why? To create and achieve a set of ideals from zero poverty to no hunger across the world, for promoting gender parity, global education, safe, sustainable sanitation, and many more issues, many more criterias on which we can build a healthy, fulfilled global community by the end of 2030. But the problem is, here the sustainable goal number 5 does not relate with quality education. In fact, it talks about gender equality or gender parity. So that's where the statement is essentially wrong. And on that note, therefore, which sustainable development goal then talks about right to good quality and quality-oriented, work, skill-oriented, sustainable education to everyone. And that's the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. So therefore, the first statement here stands invalid. Talking about the second statement, it says the Global Gender Report, the Global Gender Gap Report, an index that measures gender equality and empowerment across various communities around the globe, is released by UN Women. Not really, because this Global Gender Gap Report is released instead by World Economic Forum and not UN Women. Now, UN Women is a separate body that looks into women problems and promotes gender empowerment, but it does not release this index, and therefore none of these statements are valid, making D the correct answer. And on that note, let's come to the second question for the day. It says, consider the following statements. Statement first talks about Malabar exercise. Now, you might be wondering, why are we talking about Malabar and Desert Eagle exercise? The reason is an Economic Times news that pertains to international relations. It talks about how India and Saudi Arabia are conducting a joint military exercise, which has been referred to as SADA. Tanseek exercises. Now, these are joint military exercises and specifically targeted towards testing the capacity of military in a desert ecosystem. And no wonder Rajasthan is the location where these exercises are being conducted between the both countries. And on that note, let's hopping back to the question. The first statement says Malabar exercise is a multi bilateral naval wargaming exercise that began as a bilateral negotiation, a bilateral exercise between the navies of India and the US? Well, absolutely. That's a valid statement because started back in 1992. Initially, Malabar took place between the India and the United States, but eventually it became a multilateral naval exercise with Japan joining in 2015 and Australia stepping in by 2020. So today we refer to the Quad countries, and in that reference we speak about the Malabar exercise as well to promote, coordinate and strengthen naval capacities of each of these countries, also causing consternation in China. Statement number 2. The exercise Desert Eagle is a bilateral exercise between India and Saudi Arabia. It is a wrong statement because the exercise Desert Eagle is a bilateral air force exercise that's held between India and the UAE, between the air forces of both these countries, and therefore we can say that here only the first statement is valid, which means A is the right answer with only one statement being correct. And on that note, we will talk about the third question on our screen now. The third question talks about something that's called Montreux Record. It's pronounced as the Montreux Record, and it is basically an index. It is basically a list that is covered under Ramsar Convention on Wetland Preservation across the world. If you wonder why this question has become so prominent, then let's quickly verify with the news. The news has been picked up from the Hindu Biodiversity and Ecology, very relevant for your GS paper 3 mains as well as for your prelims. The article says how more than 11,000 bird species were recorded where in the wetland region of Pudukkottai. Why is this relevant? It is relevant because this research conducted by many NGOs, bird enthusiasts and students were actually thrilled to cite more than 82 species of birds that have been found in this given location, pointing out to rich biodiversity of this regional wetland. And on that note, the question says, Statement 1, the Montreux Record is a register of wetland sites on the list of Ramsar wetlands, which are of international importance, where changes in ecology, changes in environment, ecosystem have been happening. They have happened and they will continue to happen because of anthropogenic reasons. Now, what is this word anthropogenic? It's a very common word when you talk about ecology. So whenever we use the word anthropogenic, what we are trying to say is situations or impacts that are caused because of human action, human intervention. And that's what we are talking about, that all the wetlands which are under threat because of construction, pollution, or because of human-induced problems are covered under the Montreux Record. Absolutely valid statement. A good to know, a very important point for your prelims. Coming to the second statement, it says, Bakhira Wildlife Sanctuary in Gujarat has been declared as Ramsar wetland of international importance. Do you think it's true? Only half of it is true, because the Bakhira Wildlife Sanctuary is one of the largest natural floodplain wetland of India, and it does not but belong to the state of Gujarat. In fact, it's found in Uttar Pradesh. So therefore, the second statement is invalid, which means once again, A is your valid answer. First statement is only correct. Coming to the fourth question of today's quiz, let's analyze the statements given below. First statement says Kanchenjunga, which is also pronounced as Kangsen Zedonga National Park, has been inscribed. It was in fact inscribed already as India's first mixed World Heritage Site, which means it has features of both cultural as well as natural significance. This was put on the UNESCO's Mixed World Heritage Site. Is that true? Well, absolutely, it's a true statement because Kanchenjunga, which comes under the Sikkim region of India, is indeed the first such site which was given the status of mixed world heritage, given not only the rich biodiversity of this national park, but also the fact that it has a huge cultural significance for the people of the region. Correct statement. Let's look at the second statement. The Blue Shield. This is an international organization which protects world's cultural heritage, which protects sites which have a cultural relevance and have been protected from any damage because of human action, armed conflict, wars, or natural disasters. Is that a valid statement? Indeed, it's a valid statement. That's exactly what Blue Shield does as an organization, and therefore we can say here C will be the valid answer. Both the above statements are absolutely true. On that note, why was this news piece even picked up for analysis? It was picked up because of a PIB release pertaining to the art and culture segment of UPSC, which says that Maratha military landscape of India, they have been nominated for being recognized under UNESCO's World Heritage Site list for 2024 and 25. Now, these basically belong to the 17th and the 19th centuries, and they represent a rich cultural heritage of India, talking about the extraordinary, talking about the intricate fortification and the unique military system that belongs to this era created by the Maratha rulers, and hence the question. And now coming to the PYQ 2014. It says, which one of the following schedules of Indian Constitution talks about or deals with anti-defection law? A very easy direct question from polity. Here the options are A, second schedule, B, fifth, C, eighth, and D, 10th schedule. So let's remember, it definitely cannot be fifth schedule, because fifth and sixth schedule deal with management of scheduled areas. Talking about eighth schedule, yesterday we spoke about languages and official, the recognized languages of India. So that's 8th schedule for us. Then not the second schedule, but we are talking about the 10th schedule here. Now 10th schedule was introduced after 1985. It came as a part of 52nd Amendment to the Constitution, and it deals with laws which prohibit members from deflecting, moving off from one party to another, party hopping, changing their parties just to win elections. So hence, it has promoted better commitment and it has promoted better quality of democracy, and hence 10th schedule talks about anti-defection law. And on this note, let's quickly proceed with today's fact, and we will talk about women empowerment. You might have heard about the Mission Shakti, how it was created as a scheme which wanted to implement on a mission mode, on a fast-track basis, many interventions to promote security, empowerment and safety of Indian women. Now, talking about the recent NCRB data, talking about the fact that crimes against women have increased multifold in the previous few years, specifically after the COVID pandemic 2020. Here, we talk about how the Ministry of Women and Child Development is the nodal ministry for Mission Shakti, and the Mission Shakti has come in the form of two components. The first component here is known as Sambal component. Well, it's a Hindi connotation for support, safety and welfare. So the Sambal component talks about safety and security for women. There is another aspect to Mission Shakti, and that talks about Samarthya sub-scheme. Now, what do you mean by the word Samarthya? Samarthya rather. Samarthya would mean skill, capacity, ability. It pertains to the word empowerment for women. Under both these aspects, the sub-components of the Mission Shakti, we have various initiatives taken by the government. For example, if you talk about the Sambhal, the safety security sub-scheme, we talk about various initiatives such as the Ujjwala scheme. Not to be confused with the LPG scheme, but we talk about how to protect and safeguard, how to rescue victims of sexual trafficking. That's Ujjwala scheme. Plus, we talk about the One-Stop Center scheme. Under the One-Stop Center scheme, the government has tried to provide one single consolidated desk, often located in police stations in every district, where victims of domestic or public abuse, women who are victims of crime, women who are homeless, women who are unemployed, below poverty line, or who are experiencing some kind of crime, those victims can come here and they will be provided legal, medical, psychological, financial aid all at one place. So that's again a very wonderful intervention. We also talk about the Women Helpline. All these financed under the Nirbhaya Fund. That's the Sambhal sub-scheme. Now talking about the Samarthya sub-scheme, we talk about initiatives such as Shakti Sadan, integrated relief and rehabilitation home. Now, under the Samarthya scheme, many schemes previously existing under the Sambhal component, such as Ujjwala or Swadar Griha, they all have been consolidated at one place for administrative ease and comfort. Also, we talk about Swadargrah. Swadargrah are meant to be shelters for destitute women, where women who are unemployed and victims of violence, homelessness, they can come and get support. Not only that, the government might also provide them training to take up some source of self-financing initiative. And now with this initiative, we come to an end of today's quiz. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and question answers. Take care, all the best, and thank you so much.